Have you ever wondered why the silent treatment feels so painful even though it's often dismissed as just another argument tactic? Today, we are uncovering the real truth behind silent treatment in relationships. If you've ever found yourself confused, abandoned, or even anxious when an avoidant type or someone you're close to goes silent during a conflict, this video is for you. And at the end, we'll reveal an overlooked truth about the silent treatment that could completely shift how you approach conflict in relationships. Starting with reason number 1. Have you ever been in a situation where someone suddenly goes quiet after a disagreement, leaving you feeling anxious, confused, or maybe even abandoned? It's that cold silence that makes you question everything. Are they mad at you? Is the relationship in trouble? This silence feels far heavier than just the absence of words, doesn't it? Now, this reaction might seem like a strategy to create distance or punish you, but what if it's more complicated than that? Let's think of it like this. Picture a turtle pulling into its shell when it senses danger. That's exactly what some people are doing, except their danger is emotional overload. Research suggests that when people feel emotionally threatened, they tend to retreat, not to manipulate, but to protect themselves from saying something hurtful. Dr. Amir Levine, an expert in attachment theory, even highlights that these individuals are not trying to punish their partners, but are overwhelmed by their own need for space and time to process. Here's the truth. The silent treatment is often a response to feeling emotionally disconnected and overwhelmed, rather than a tool for punishment. For many avoidant types, their silence is a way of soothing themselves when emotions run high, not an attempt to hurt or control. It's essential to acknowledge the fear behind the silence and encourage open communication once things have cooled down. Remember, emotional distance doesn't always mean the relationship is breaking. Reason number 2. Think about a time when you felt shut out by someone important to you. After a heated discussion, instead of hearing an apology or explanation, you were met with cold, crushing silence. Frustrating, right? You might have even questioned why they couldn't just say how they feel instead of pulling away. But what if the silence wasn't about you at all? What most people don't realize is that silence can be a defense mechanism. It's like building a fortress around their emotions, and vulnerability feels like handing you the keys to that fortress. But is it really about trying to hurt you? Or is it about them struggling with their own inner fears? Imagine you're holding a glass that's almost full of water. Every time more water is added, it risks overflowing. That's how avoidants feel when emotions run high. Vulnerability, in this case, feels like the final drop that could make everything spill over. A study by psychologist Mary Ainsworth shows that avoidants are not cold-hearted. They often desire connection but find it difficult to express these feelings, fearing they might expose too much of themselves. Here's what you need to know. The silent treatment is often driven by a fear of vulnerability, not a desire to push others away. Avoidants may retreat because they don't feel equipped to handle the emotional floodgates being opened. If you find yourself in this situation, create a safe space for them to express their feelings without pressure or judgment. Remember, fear of vulnerability isn't a sign they don't care. It's a sign they need time to feel secure. Reason number 3. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's silence felt like they were holding all the power in the relationship? It's as if, by saying nothing, they've taken control of the entire conversation or lack of it. The silence feels like a weapon, right? But what if that control isn't about dominance, but rather a way for them to regain a sense of stability? Many people believe that when someone uses the silent treatment, it's a manipulative tactic to control the other person's emotions. But could it be that this silence is about controlling their own emotions instead? What if their silence is the only way they know how to keep things from spiraling out of control when they're overwhelmed? Think of it like trying to drive a car through a storm. The road is slippery, visibility is low, and any wrong move could lead to a crash. For many avoidants, emotional conflict feels just like that storm. Their silence is them pulling over to avoid a wreck. Research by Dr. Stan Tatkin, a psychotherapist specializing in relationships, points out that avoidance often withdraw not to punish but to stabilize their emotions. Silence becomes their way to stop the chaos they feel inside before it spills out in damaging ways. The answer is, the silent treatment can be more about regaining internal control rather than trying to control their partner. When emotions run too high, avoidance shut down to manage their own feelings. To navigate this, allow space for emotional regulation, but initiate gentle, non-confrontational communication when they're ready. Remember, silence might feel like control, but it's often a signal of emotional overload. Reason number 4. We've all been there. An argument starts, tensions rise, and just when you expect things to blow up, the other person goes completely silent. It feels like they're refusing to engage, right? But is that silence an act of avoiding you, or is it something more? Could it be that they're not avoiding you, but avoiding the conflict itself? It's easy to assume that when someone shuts down during a disagreement, they're trying to ignore the problem. However, it might be that conflict feels too intense for them to handle, and silence becomes a way to escape the emotional discomfort. But this avoidance doesn't mean they don't care. It could mean they care too much but feel ill-equipped to deal with the emotional strain that comes with confrontation. Think of conflict like a hot stove. Most people naturally want to pull away from anything that could burn them. And for avoidance, emotional conflict is that hot stove. Studies on attachment theory, like those from Dr. Sue Johnson, a clinical psychologist specializing in relationships, show that avoidant individuals often retreat because they associate conflict with emotional pain. They instinctively step back to avoid getting hurt, which can leave their partners feeling abandoned. Here's what's really happening. The silent treatment is often a form of conflict avoidance, not a dismissal of the issue. Avoidants tend to withdraw because facing the argument head-on feels emotionally overwhelming. To address this, approach conflict with calmness and assurance, focusing on collaboration rather than confrontation. Remember, silence in the face of conflict doesn't mean they don't want to resolve it. It means they're unsure how to do so without getting emotionally burned. Now that we've explored how the silent treatment of avoidance in relationships can stem from various emotional struggles, you might think you've heard it all. But what if I told you that this silence isn't just about them wanting to be alone or ignore conflict? As promised, here's a deeper layer to it. Reason number 5. When someone shuts down and stops communicating, it can feel like they've built a wall between you and them. But have you ever considered that this wall isn't meant to keep you out, but to keep their emotions in? Could the silent treatment be more about self-protection than punishing you? Many believe that silence is used to hurt or manipulate. But for avoidance, it's often a shield they put up when they feel too vulnerable or emotionally exposed. This silence isn't an attempt to create distance from you, but rather a way to protect their own feelings when they don't know how to express them. Think of it like a knight putting on armor before heading into battle. That armor isn't there to attack anyone. It's there to protect them from getting hurt. Similarly, avoidants use silence as their emotional armor when they feel threatened by vulnerability. Research by Dr. Brené Brown, an expert on vulnerability and shame, suggests that people who fear vulnerability often use distancing behaviors like silence to protect themselves from being emotionally hurt. For them, it's like being mortally wounded. Here's the bottom line. The silent treatment is often a form of self-protection, not a strategy to push you away. Avoidants retreat because they're scared of being emotionally exposed and need time to feel safe again. To help them, approach them with empathy and reassurance, allowing them to express themselves without feeling judged or pressured. Remember, silence can be their armor, but with patience, you can help them feel safe enough to take it off. Have you ever experienced the silent treatment in a relationship? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments. If you're interested to learn more about relationships, be sure to watch our video about the 5 types of partners that complicate breakups to learn more about the power of you. See you there.